healthy green lawn is the result of the proper combination of sunlight, water, fertilizer, and mowing. And nothing enhances the look of your home more than a healthy green lawn. Keeping a lawn looking good is a skill which requires a certain amount of knowledge and effort. This video will teach you how to calculate the proper amount of product needed. You will learn about the components and the operation of your spreader. Also, I will show you special techniques for slopes and small areas and how to keep the product out of sensitive areas. Please watch the entire video and go through the accompanying reference guide before starting. The first thing that you will need to know is how much product is required for the size of the turf area that you will be applying it to. This is very important. You will need to calculate the total square footage of your lawn. Measure as accurately as possible and round off the total to the nearest 100 feet. Refer to the accompanying reference guide to figure your measurements. Once you have your total square footage, you can calculate how many pounds of product that you will need. Reading the label of the product will tell you how many pounds per 1,000 square feet the product should be applied. It is very important to read the entire label of any turf product. You want to make sure that the product is safe for your type of grass. If you don't know what type of grass you have, check with your local garden shop or your state extension office. Also, there may be precautions to keep the product out of sensitive areas like gardens, pools, sandboxes, and so on. There are many different types of spreaders, and their components will vary slightly. Let's discuss the features of this one. This is the hopper. It holds the product. The spinner plate or impeller disperses the product. The drive wheel drives or powers the spinner plate. The idle or coasting wheel rolls with the equipment. The control chute, when opened, allows the product to flow out of the bottom of the hopper and onto the spinner plate. The control lever opens and closes the control chute. The control gauge limits how far the control chute will open. These are the basic components of a typical broadcast spreader. Now, some commercial type spreaders have a deflector shield that redirects the product and keeps it out of sensitive areas. This is how we created a deflector shield for our spreader. We took a thin piece of plywood, 14 by 10 inches, and clamped it on the drive wheel side so it hung just below the spinner plate, parallel with the wheel. I will show you later how to use this. Now, it is best to become familiar with the operation of your spreader before using it. Push the spreader across the lawn to get the feel of it. Operate the control lever to become familiar with which direction is on and which is off. Also, be sure that when it is off, the control chute closes completely. Next, determine which of the wheels is the drive wheel. Spin the wheels. The one that powers the spinner plate is the drive wheel. This is important to know because the drive wheel should be on the outside of your turns so the spinner plate continues to spin as you turn. Now, if the drive wheel is on the inside of your turn, the spinner plate will slow down or stop and will not disperse the product out evenly, which may damage your lawn. If you have to make an inside turn, turn off the spreader, make your turn, and then start up again. The control gauge is the main way of determining how much product will be applied to the turf. The setting on the control gauge will determine how far the control chute will open. This in turn determines how much of the product will flow out of the hopper and onto the spinner plate. Setting the control gauge can be a little tricky. Several factors play a role in where to set the gauge. The label of the product may suggest a setting for particular spreaders. Now, this can be a good starting point. The size of the particles of the product will have an effect on the flow. The smaller the particles, the faster it will flow. For fine particles, you will have to turn down the setting. The speed at which you walk will also affect the setting. The faster you walk, the sooner you would finish, so you would open it wider. Also, the width of your pattern will have some effect. Always start off at a low setting. It is better to underapply than it is to overapply and possibly damage your lawn. The chute should be open wide enough to allow a consistent flow of the product. If the product does not flow at a consistent rate, the chute should be opened wider. Check to make certain that there is not a large particle blocking the opening. Applying the product. Again, read the entire label of the product before applying. It may require the turf to be wet, dry, tall, or even recently cut prior to application. Now set the spreader's control gauge accordingly. Wear the recommended clothing. When opening the product container, hold your head away from the opening and stand upwind. Be certain the control chute is closed. Fill the hopper on a hard, flat surface, not on the lawn. If you have a spill, it will be much easier to clean up and it won't damage your lawn. Pour a little more than the required amount of product into the hopper. Watch for any large particles that may clog the chute opening. Do not fill the hopper to the top. Start in an area of your lawn that is the least noticeable. Now this is in case you have a problem or need to adjust the spreader. It won't be in the most visible area. Break up the lawn into workable sections. Now there are basically two different ways to apply turf products. Choose the one that will fit your situation best. Number one should be used with drop-type spreaders and can also be used with broadcast spreaders. Make one perimeter pass all along the edge of your lawn. Then go back and forth in straight lines. The second method, which tends to be quicker, can only be used with a broadcast spreader. The first pass will be on the edge following the perimeter. Subsequent passes should follow the contour of your previous pass until you reach the center. Make certain the drive wheel is on the outside of your turns. The product must overlap on your passes to ensure proper coverage. For drop-type spreaders, the wheels should overlap on each pass. For broadcast spreaders, your next pass should be over a few feet from your prior pass, so the spreader's throw pattern overlaps by a foot. When keeping the product out of sensitive areas becomes an issue, a deflector shield will greatly assist you. The deflector shield will help keep the product on the turf and off or out of sensitive areas such as gutters, driveways, pools, sandboxes, and gardens. Be careful when approaching a sensitive area. Stop before the product reaches that area. If possible, and when there is not a large lip, start on the concrete and shoot the product onto the lawn away from the sensitive area. Start at the corner with the drive wheel on the outside edge. Simultaneously open the spreader and begin walking at a consistent pace. When you approach a stopping point, turn off the spreader before stopping completely. Reposition the spreader and begin again. Remember that it is important to turn off the spreader when stopping or repositioning. Otherwise, the product will continue to flow out of the spreader, resulting in over-application and potential lawn damage. Always keep both hands on the spreader. Unexpected bumps, roots, or holes could cause the spreader to spill. If it is difficult to see your spreader wheel tracks, use landmarks such as fence posts, trees, parts of the house, or use flags to help keep track of your passes. Here are some other tips. Wait a few days after the lawn has been mowed so the grass is longer. And looking forward ahead of the spreader will also help you to see your wheel tracks. Sometimes you may have to stop, so leave the spreader in its current position and walk around to find out where you are at. Then resume your pattern. For areas that are narrower than the throw pattern, set the control gauge down slightly and walk a little slower so the product stays within the turf area. Use a deflector shield if possible. Steep slopes can also be difficult to fertilize. You will want to make a pass at the bottom and one across the top. Then push the spreader up the hill on each pass. The reference guide will tell you more about application to slopes. When you are finished, Pour any remaining product back into its original container. Do not store any product in the spreader. Sweep the product off concrete, street, and gutters. We do not want the product to be washed down into the waterways. Also, some fertilizers contain iron, which can cause rust stains. If you have a blower, blow the product back onto the lawn. This works great. Here are some additional tips. Be careful when taking the spreader onto a lawn that has a large lip on the edge. It may be best to pull the spreader over the lip. Shaded areas require less fertilizer. Now, if you have a large area affected by dog spots, fertilizing that area will only make it worse. Skip these areas or fertilize them lightly. Wash your spreader after each use in an area where the rinse water will not go down into the gutter, such as a rock area. Lubricate the parts of the spreader as recommended by the manufacturer. If you happen to spill a large amount of fertilizer on the lawn, first pick up as much as possible with your hands. And don't forget to always wear protective gloves. Then, using a flat-faced shovel, cut the turf out like a piece of sod. Then take the piece of sod and turn it upside down over a plastic bag or a place where you can sweep it up. Shake and scratch the product out of the turf. Replace the piece of sod and water it every day for 10 days. Reuse the product if possible. Well, with a little effort and the information provided in this video, you should be successful in achieving a beautiful green lawn. Good luck.